A viewer emailed us to say her son has refused to speak to her or let her see her grandchildren since she decided to stop being a Jehovah's Witness 6 years ago. She asked us to look into the practice of shunning, whereby people are ignored by their family and people in their former congregation when they choose to leave the faith. Speaking publicly for the first time together, 3 former Jehovah's Witnesses have given us a rare insight into what happens when you stop believing in the religion. One of them is Terry O'Sullivan, who stopped being a Jehovah's Witness 17 years ago. Sarah and John left much more recently, and we've protected their identities. These are not their real names, and John's words are spoken for him. Give our audience a little bit of an insight into what it was like growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, Sarah.
I was what was classed as a 3rd generation Jehovah's Witness. So my grandparents were Jehovah's Witnesses, my parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, and then I was a Jehovah's Witness. I was limited in my social groups, so I wasn't allowed to associate with school friends. But even then, as I got older, be it living under my parents' roof or with my husband, I wasn't allowed to associate with work friends outside of work either.
Right. So anybody who wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, effectively, you weren't supposed to be friends with or associate with.
Exactly.
Why?
They believe that bad associations, or the scripture they use is bad association spoils useful habits. So anybody outside of the Jehovah's Witness religion is classed as a bad association. That is friends and even family that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses that have maybe perhaps not converted at the same time. You're not supposed to have anything to do with them either.
What about yourself, John? What insight would you give our audience in terms of living your life as a Jehovah's Witness? What could you do, what couldn't you do, etc.?
Well, there was nothing like birthdays or Christmases, any of that kind of normal celebrations that children seem to enjoy. They were strictly taboo, and that kind of subjected you to a fair bit of jeering and laughing at school. And then the kids would always say things like, "What are you waiting for, Christmas?" Just that kind of mickey taking. Like Sarah, I didn't have many friends. I did have a couple of friends within school, but association with them was very limited, certainly outside. So most of my friends were Jehovah's Witnesses, which kind of makes you grow up in a very insular environment where the only thing you're ever subjected to is other witnesses and other witnesses' kind of beliefs.
And in terms of going to school, obviously you went to school. What about higher education, A-levels, university, etc.?
Strictly frowned upon. I got fairly good GCSE results at school. I had the opportunity to go to university, but it was frowned upon.
Because?
They encourage you to live a simple, what they call a simple life. So you're not to be materialistic. So a higher qualification is classed as being materialistic. I was encouraged at 16 to get an admin job and pioneer, which is doing a set amount of hours for the witnesses going door to door. I was really discouraged from doing anything, even my A-levels.
Right.
Certainly the education in my was something that I felt very frustrated about, because actually my dad was quite progressive in that he did encourage me to get an education, but the cultural environment of the witnesses was stronger than he was.
So you went to school till what, 16?
I went to school until I was 16, yeah. And then, as a lot of young witnesses do, I had to start window cleaning and did that for 7 years, so I missed out on the opportunity to go to university, that's something I regret.
Why don't we stop all this covering up of child molesting? The 2-witness rule is wicked. Why do Jehovah's Witnesses keep covering up child molesting? We're fed up with it. You keep disfellowshipping poor young people and ruining their lives. Why are you doing it? You stop covering all this child molesting. You're wicked.
Though very rare, due to depression, even some true Christians have taken their life. But generally, we are a happy people, aren't we?
We need to remember this point. That is, that our relationship with God and our relationship with our brothers is one and the same.
Hello again. Who are you going to film tonight, Leon? Who have you come to film tonight?
You're being a bit aggressive, aren't you?
Jehovah's Witnesses have been accused of failing the victims of child sex abuse after a case in Manchester where a man who was convicted of sexual assault was allowed to cross-examine his victims. The Charity Commission, which regulates the religious group, said the questioning was inappropriate and demeaning. One victim described the meeting as worse than the court case. An audio recording of the meeting has been passed to our social affairs correspondent Michael Buchanan.
This is New Moston Kingdom Hall in Manchester, where Jonathan Rose spent years as a senior member. In 2013, he was imprisoned for 9 months after being convicted of the historical sexual abuse of young girls. Jehovah's Witnesses went to expel him, but Rose appealed, which led to an extraordinary gathering.
A meeting was called between 8 male elders, a convicted paedophile and his female victims. Over the course of an evening, the women had to recount what had happened to them, while he, Jonathan Rose, got to interrogate them.
Each woman was questioned separately. One secretly recorded her grilling by Jonathan Rose.
What I'm saying to you is this didn't happen. Give me one reason please why I would have done it to you. I had no reason to touch you, we were friends.
At one point, another man in the room asked the woman if she'd egged Rose on, and no one prevented him from discussing graphic details.
What was I supposed to have done to you that night? Please explain to me. Not to be perverted, did I touch you down below? Did I touch your breasts?
All you elders who have written detailed accounts of little children being molested, been in the same room and gone and told other elders about it, given it to the branch committee, yeah, all these confidential details of little children being raped by fellow Jehovah's Witnesses. Hey, you elders are going to be held account like they are in Australia, having passed around child pornography. You're going to be on the sex offenders list. Yeah, and we're going to publicise the sex offenders list. Yeah, you bet your life we're going to publicise it. You elders are going to be on it. The sex offenders list for having passed around child pornography. Can't you see it, you elders? You've kept fine details, graphic details of little children being molested by other Jehovah's Witnesses. You're going to be held accountable for it. They've been molested by Jehovah's Witnesses. Phone the police. Phone social services. Phone anybody. Don't cover it up. Jesus wouldn't. Jesus wouldn't cover up child molesting. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't, would he? Would Jesus cover up child molesting? I don't think so. Yeah. Jehovah's Witness organisation allowed children to be raped. Then they throw them out, if they inform the police, you throw them out, didn't you? How many little children you sat down, eh? Eh? Ask them what colour knickers they had on, how many times they would touch. You elders think it all funny, do ya? Eh? You perverted blood. How do you sleep at night? Eh? Eh? I used to sit a little child down in front of the guy who's molested her and asked her how did she feel when she was molested? Eh? What kind of men are ya? What kind of men disfellowship young people, cutting them off from mummy and daddy, and nanny and granddad? Eh? When little children need advice and help, what help you give them, eh? Cutting them off from mummy and daddy? Did Jesus do it? Did he?